I'm Nicole Gelormino. I'm a teaching artist. Welcome to my project on paper cutting. This video was made in partnership with the Luther Burbank Center for the Arts for the Let's Be Creative video series.
What am I doing? I'm cutting paper. What tools or materials do I have? A pair of scissors and a piece of paper. This happens to be a piece of red tissue paper. What am I cutting? A shape? A line? If I keep cutting this line all the way around, it will become a shape. Have I drawn the shape before I started? Nope. I'm actually drawing with the scissors instead of drawing with a pencil. What do you notice about my shape? It's very wiggly. It's curvy. It looks like goop or a leaf or a monster. My shape could be just about anything. One of my hands is holding the scissors and one hand is holding the paper. Which of my hands do you notice is moving the most? That's right, the hand that's holding the paper. My scissors hand is really just staying in place and cutting the scissors straight. I'm moving the paper around so that I can cut this very interesting shape. If I try to move my scissor hands, it could hurt my wrist, and it's really hard to control the shape. So the best way to make an interesting shape is to move the paper around while you cut straight. What's exciting about paper cutting? It's fun to make an image or a new shape by removing parts of the paper, by cutting away shapes. The red paper is what's called the positive shape. The shapes I've cut away are called the negative shapes, and you can still see the negative shapes because of the edge of the paper. What else am I doing? I folded my paper cutting in one place and I'm cutting small shapes on the edge of the fold. When I open up that paper, I will have made negative shapes inside of the positive shapes. So you can use folding as a way of creating additional shapes inside of your paper cut. Paper cutting is a fantastic artistic tradition that has roots in multiple cultures across the globe. Let's take a look at two of those to get ideas and inspiration. To be clear, I am not an expert in either of these two paper making traditions, as I do not have Chinese or Mexican ancestry. I am a contemporary American artist of European and Asian Indian ancestry, getting inspiration from the Chinese and Mexican traditions of paper cutting. In Mexico, paper cutting is called papel picado, which means punched paper. The two paper cuts on the left are made with white paper on a brown background. That brown background is made from bark, tree bark. Originally, paper cuttings in Mexico were used for ritual purposes, to set an intention or express a wish or have some sort of spiritual impact on daily life. When Chinese goods began to reach Mexico by way of global trading, Mexican artists had access to very thin paper, and this paper they found was very effective in creating more detailed designs. Images of skulls or calaveras cut from tissue paper or foil are used to decorate ofrendas for the celebration of the Day of the Dead, or Dia de los Muertos, which happens in early November. It's important that these paper cuts are colorful and beautiful so as to seduce the spirits of lost loved ones back to the family on a day of remembrance. Click on the YouTube playlist below to learn more about Mexican papel picado from contemporary folk artists who are living experts on the art form. These red paper cuts from China feature a lion and a young dancer and are used to remind the Chinese of hope and good luck during the time of the Lunar New Year. Extremely tiny details and lots of human and animal characters are really common in Chinese paper cuts. Originally, paper cutting was considered a woman's art form. These paper cuts feature masks or makeup designs of characters from Chinese opera. The finished paper cuts, made originally from white paper, are then painted with alcohol-based dyes or paints. Please click on the YouTube playlist below to learn more about the artistic traditions of paper cutting from China and Mexico. The materials you'll need for this project are a pair of scissors, and if you're a teenager or an adult, maybe an x-acto knife. You'll also need thin paper. I like to use tissue paper, wrapping paper, even pages from magazines. You also might want to have some white glue handy. I like to put it in a small cup and use a brush or a foam brush to apply it. Once you have all of your materials in front of you, think, what kind of paper cut are you going to make today? What kinds of shapes will you cut? Will you start with a plan, or will you just let your scissors lead the drawing, following the line in different directions until it meets itself to make a shape? What kinds of positive and negative shapes will end up in your paper cut? If you choose not to plan your paper cut, I wonder if your design might delight or surprise you today. Some tips for a successful paper cut are to remember to turn the paper and not the scissors. That way it protects your wrist and also gives you more control of the shape you are cutting. Second tip is just to practice, practice, practice. Try to practice on scrap paper so that you can build your skills in cutting and turning the paper. Finally, one way to create negative shapes inside of the positive shape is to fold the paper and cut small shapes from the fold. Also, try not to cut across the entire paper cut because then your paper cut will fall apart, but you might end up with some interesting scraps. Here are some things you can do with your paper cuts. You can glue them to the cover of a notebook or sketchbook. You can glue them to a lampshade. You can hang them in a window with Scotch tape. You can glue or staple them to a string and hang. You can paint them with ink or with watercolor. You can glue a bunch of paper cuts together onto a background to create a collage.
If you enjoyed this project, come on back next Tuesday at 3:30 p.m. for another Let's Be Creative video with the Luther Burbank Center for the Arts.